In this part of the audit, the auditor is auditing the organization's internal test laboratory. Watch this video to determine if the auditor uses effective auditing techniques. So Dawn, we are now then in our Photometric Test Lab. This is one of the few labs in the country, and it's actually covered by the type approval. The type of approval authority have given us the right to do the tests, but they will come and observe some of the tests. But I'd like to introduce you here to Gordon. Gordon has recently joined us as a test engineer. So over to Gordon.
Hi Gordon,
Hi.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you,
My
Dawn.
name's Dawn, I've come to do the audit today.
Okay.
Okay, so I understand that you're quite new here?
Yep, I've been here 3 months, so this is a sort of niche lighting business. I've worked in high volume lighting, but this is my first time in a sort of small niche manufacturer.
Okay, that's great. So tell me a little bit about photometric testing then.
Yes, so essentially what we're doing is checking that the headlight, when it's in use, has got the ability to work at both sort of mid and long range, and that's essentially what we're doing up here. We're checking that the light is capable of distributing light over short to long ranges at the right level. So obviously there's a sort of safety implication there.
Yeah, and to the legal requirements in there. Obviously, we've taken you through how
Yeah.
you access
Yeah.
the latest.
Yeah.
Okay, so what criteria are you working against then?
So we are working against the UN ECE specifications regulations. So we access those from the website. You can see here.
So that's how you're making sure that you've got the most up-to-date version,
Yeah.
by going through the website.
Exactly, and basically we've got a long specification that we have to check against using this equipment in this environment.
Okay, what are we testing at the moment then, Gordon?
So right now we are looking at the indicators. So we're looking at the signalling lights specifically.
Okay, and how do we know whether or not we're meeting specification?
So again, we revert back to the UNECE spec. That will list out the various categories that we need to check against. We run the test on our equipment here, and we write a report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happens if we don't meet the testing criteria?
So, and again, I'm sort of fairly new in this organisation, but what we would do is we would involve the design team as a sort of immediate response. If we failed on one of the criteria, the first thing we would do is obviously alert the design team, and as a company we'd get together and work out why we think we failed and what we need to do.
Okay, and how are we ensuring that the equipment is giving us the correct measurements?
Yeah, now this is very specific equipment. You can't just go and buy one of these easily. So we've had a lot of problems, again, talking to colleagues here, trying to get someone to calibrate this that is accredited to do the calibration. But fortunately, with the latest SI, we actually use the manufacturer, the equipment manufacturer. This is such kind of niche equipment. We use the manufacturer to do the calibration.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your time. Nice to meet you, Gordon.
No
I
problem.
think, Dan, if we can follow up on some of these in the next process in calibration, and also in HR for training records.
Yeah, we can show you the calibration record, sure.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So let's summarize. In this organization who make car lighting systems, it is essential they can demonstrate an effective process to meet all applicable legal and regulatory requirements. This can be done in an internal laboratory with approval from the relevant type approval authority or by an external approved laboratory. In this audit, the auditor is auditing the internal testing facility specifically related to photometric testing. A key part of the audit is to establish how the organization has access to the up-to-date regulatory requirements and also show records that demonstrate they meet these requirements. The auditor also needs to establish that the testing activity in the internal laboratory scope, including the competency of the employees and the relevant measuring test equipment, is calibrated. In this audit, the organization stated that the calibration of the test equipment is done by the original equipment manufacturer. In the original IATF 16949 issued in 2016, the organization would have needed to obtain customer approval before using a non-ISO IEC 17025 approved laboratory. But considering the requirements of the Sanction Interpretation 10, the requirement 7.1.5.3.2 now reads, where a non-accredited laboratory is utilized, for example, but not limited to specialist or integrated equipment, parameters with no international traceable reference or original equipment manufacturer. In this case, the organization is responsible to ensure that there is evidence that the laboratory has been evaluated to meet the requirements defined under the internal laboratory requirements 7.1.5.3.1 of IATF 16949. The auditor should follow up on how the organization undertook the evaluation to ensure that the OEM at minimum meets the requirements of 7.1.5.3.1 internal laboratory. This could be done, for example, by seeing evidence from the OEM or by going to the OEM and doing an on-site audit. So now let's summarize the key learning points in this video. In any audit, it is important to verify, as well as meeting any customer requirements, that all regulatory and statutory requirements related to the product are understood and met by the organization. In auditing an internal laboratory, a key document to review is the internal laboratory scope. When auditing calibration, if the calibration is, for example, done by the OEM, evidence should be sought that they, at minimum, meet the requirements of the internal laboratory requirement 7.1.5.3.1. Finally, auditors should be aware of the latest sanctioned interpretations and frequently asked questions when undertaking audits.